Hey guys, this is Sharp Corners for Kids coming at you again with another deck tech. This again is blue-black Tezzeret. I'm posting this video because with this deck I went 4-0 at the daytime F&M up at the Four Horsemen in Morgantown, West Virginia. And I didn't play the night because me and my friend were video recording for wastedmeter.com. Their link will be in the description. And I did all 5 commentaries of their F&M this week, so I'm going to go ahead and send you guys over there, check that out, give them a couple subscribers. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It is pretty fun times. So with that being said, this is Tezzeret. I'll be going over each individual part of the deck as much as I can. But in the short run, I mean, I went 4-0. I lost only one game the whole time, and that was against Haunted Humans, and they got a very explosive start on me. So I will actually be going over that, and I'll be giving you guys a rundown of the sideboard. Just as another note, this again is inspired by Frank Lapore, who directed me to an MTGO tag called Mesmerize. This is exactly his deck tech, his deck list, all of it. For the main board, the sideboard was my own doing. Some of it was his, some of it's mine. I'm not trying to copy other people's decks and say it's my own, so I'll put a link in the description of every resource I can find that links us to Frank Lapore as well as Mesmerize. So, with that being said, let's get started. Hey guys, this is Sharp Corners for Kids again, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at the lands for this deck. Again, this is blue-black Tezzeret, and we are running 23 lands. So we're running 4 Dark Slick Shores, very good, 4 Drowned Catacomb, 5 Swamp, 1 Island, 4 Phyrexia's Core. Now this is actually a card that gets the engine for this deck going. This is the card drawing engine, and I will actually go over that a little bit more later. But basically, if you don't know what it is, it's a colorless land. It taps for 1 colorless mana, and if you pay 1 colorless and tap it and sacrifice an artifact, you gain 1 life. Now you might be asking yourself how this actually draws you cards. I will actually get to that here in a minute. So yeah, 4 foily ones. And I have ADD. I'm sorry. But anyways, 4 foily Phyrexia's Core. And then we have 4 Buried Ruin to get back any artifact that we want out of our graveyard, which actually really comes in handy against, say, they're trying to surgical extract something, or take something out of the graveyard with, a reanimator spell on your side or anything like that. This is a good card to have. And it negates that. It also, brings back things like Wormcoil Engine and anything out of your grave that you don't want stolen or you want to play it. So, very good. And we have 1 Ghost Quarter. Now, this is in here for cards like Wolfrun Ramp, which I did actually come across in my last game. It was green, red, black Wolfrun Ramp, and this came in handy. It kept them from animating his Inkmoth Nexus and using his Wolfrun, so very good card to have. Alright, so going to the Planeswalkers, we have 3 Tezzeret and 1 Liliana. Now, I actually used Tezzeret's Ultimate, which is -4, target player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of artifacts you control, if you can see that. I use that a lot. I've rarely ever actually searched for artifacts with this guy, mainly because there's already so many artifacts on board. Either I was playing a more aggro strategy, and when I slammed them down, I was animating another artifact and attacking, or I did plus them to get them to ultimate a couple times, but short of that, I mean, he won me the game like he's supposed to. So there's 3 of him and 1 Liliana. Now one of her is really good in this deck. You don't want to have too many of her, because you don't want to have any dead cards in your hand. But when she did come down, she actually did a lot of work. She got rid of the cards that I couldn't get rid of. I I actually got to Ultimate her once, and it did a lot of good. Got rid of like half his lands, and so that way he couldn't play anything. It was good times. Good girl. Okay, so that being said, if I sound a little off today, I just got back from Pittsburgh on vacation for like 5 days after I played F&M, so I'm pretty tired. So I just figured I'd do this, get it out of the way. But here we go with the creatures. Now there's only, I believe, 5 creatures in this deck. There are 2 Wormcoil Engine. We all know what they do. 6 for a 6 Death Touch lifelink whenever it's put into a graveyard from play. Or, I'm sorry, battlefield, as they call it nowadays. Put a 3/3 Colorless Worm artifact with Death Touch and a 3/3 Colorless Worm artifact creature token with lifelink onto the battlefield. Same old story, different day. We got 2 Metamorphs. Now, believe it or not, I actually end up copying more of my own basic artifacts, which we'll see here in a minute, than I do Wormcoil Engines or any other card really on their side, unless it's like a Titan or something and I need to put the pressure on. I mean, he's great, but I just end up copying my own artifacts here, and I'll show you what the artifacts I am talking about. They're really not things that you would assume play. They seem kind of like a janky card. But anyways, Metamorph, good stuff. I like the promo art a lot better. And believe it or not, the promo art is a lot cheaper than the actual Metamorph. So, very cool. And we have 1 Treasure Mage. Now, there's one other artifact in this deck that he can pull other than Wormcoil Engine. We will get to him here in a second. But I've actually took someone to 10 life with Treasure Mage before, because they couldn't keep anything on the board long enough to block him. So he does work. Only being a 1-of, he's pretty good. I mean, you get him when you need to. It doesn't clog up your hand. The only time he's not that great is when you already pulled out every artifact that's 6 or greater out of your deck. So having 1 of him is pretty good. So what we've all been waiting for, the basic artifacts that actually get this deck there. So we have 1 Grafdigger's Cage. Now this is good against Wolfrun. They can't go searching their library for any creature cards and putting them into play. They can search for them, but they can't put them into play. It stops Pod, stops Reanimator, Frights, anything like that. And he's actually won me a game against Solar Flare on my 3rd round. I played him, and the other guy was like, he couldn't do anything. I even animated Grafdigger's Cage and attacked with it a couple times. I did at least 10 damage with Grafdigger's Cage, which is funny to do in a Tezzeret deck, but it can be done, and it is brutal. And this is another card that basically beat down Solar Flare. I have 4 Nile Spellbomb in here. Now, this card, if you don't know what it is, it's 1 colorless. You play it, tap, sacrifice it, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. When Nile Spellbomb is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 black. If you do, draw a card. Now, this is the start of the Graveyard Hate. Grafdigger's Cage was the start of the Graveyard Hate, but this is the start of Graveyard Hate draw engine. And it's such a subtle draw engine, people don't realize it. But you're not going to want to pop. You can, and, sometimes it's necessary to pop this without paying the black, but it's mainly in there to draw you a card, to cycle through the deck. And it's an animator target for Tezzeret. So, all around, great card. And this meta that we're in right now, Frights, any Reanimator, Solar Flare, this card does some serious work. And when it comes down on turn 1, and you're main decking them, they usually don't have an answer for it. So, very good. Very cool card. Did a lot of work. And we have 2 Microsynth Wellspring. This is the start of the draw engine. This is more of searching your library for a basic land card, revealing it, putting your hand when it comes into play, or goes into a graveyard. But this is where the Phyrexi's Core comes in handy. You pay 2 mana, you play it, you get a land card. If you didn't play one this turn, play it. Pay into the Phyrexi's Core, tap, sack this, gain 1 life, and go search for another land card. This card actually will thin your deck very, very quickly. There's only 2 of them in here, But as you can see, it's nice and foily. Believe it or not, I actually had my card shops where I live don't have a lot of like singles, so I actually had to buy these. And I mean, I only pay like a quarter more for the foily versions of a lot of these cards. The Wormcoil Engine's not so much, but you know, I've always had those. But cards like this, you know, I like to buy foil because they're still pretty cheap, and you know, it looks pretty good in the deck. But that's really a prestige thing. I mean, it's not really required. And if you feel like in your FNM people are pressured to make their decks look pretty with all foils or all promos or whatever, just remember it's the card. It's not the foil. It's not prestige. It's not the art. It is what it is. And if your deck runs smooth, who cares about it, you know? But anyways, enough rambling on and on. 2 Microsynth Wellsprings, and here we have 3 Ichor Wellspring. Now, this comes in, you get a draw card, goes in the graveyard, you get a draw card. I mean, in this deck, you saw Phyrexi's Core. You get a draw card, you gain a life, you get to draw another card. Very good, subtle draw engine. A lot of people don't catch on to how the deck really works until they have no hand, they have nothing on the field, and they're staring down 2/5/5 artifact creatures and Tez about to blow. So, with that being said, I mean, just very good card, very, very well built deck, and I've gotten a lot of compliments on how well built it was and how well prepared it was for every deck I played against. And like I said, the only time I felt threatened was when I lost that one game to Haunted Humans, which, I mean, I'll go over that here once we get past the deck, but, I mean, this deck, I never felt rushed. I never felt like I had to get stuff done or find an answer quickly. It was all pretty much just, you know, draw, go, win. So, if you guys have these cards, feel free to build it, because it is fun to play. A lot of thinking, a lot of decisions to make every turn, but, you know, it's really fun. So, with that being said, we got 3 Ratchet Bomb in here. Now, we all know what this is really used for. It's used for tokens. This FNM is the first FNM that you could actually play with the Avacyn Restored cards. I did not see in Shriek the Angels, but with this card, do you really need to be afraid of that? I mean, I actually never popped this for 0. I always popped it for like 1 or 2 to sack my own artifacts when I didn't have a Phyrexi's Core out, just to draw cards and search my library. So, I mean, it was pretty dead, this FNM I played in. And I'll go over those matches too. They're a little weird, but very good card, very good 2-drop. Now here's a card that throws a lot of people off, that they've had to actually read what it does. Throne of Geth. 2 colorless, you play it. You can tap and sacrifice an artifact. If you do, proliferate. Now the fun thing about this card is, so if you got 2 Ratchet Bombs out, you play it. You could tap, sack the other Ratchet Bomb, pump the other one up, tap it, put another charge, or tap it, put a charge counter on it, sack the other one, put 2 charge counters on it. Next turn, tap, sack Throne of Geth, and you know, take out Oblivion Rings or whatever you want to do. This is actually a card that got me to Tezzeret being 4 most of the time, because like I said, I rarely ever search with them, maybe 3 or 4 times out of 4 matches. But very good card. Gets you there. And, I mean, he also lets you continue your draw engine with the Wellsprings, the Ichor, and the Microsynth. So, all around great card. Does a lot of work for you. Now, this card actually did more for me than any other card in the deck. We have 3 Pristine Talismans here. This card, I guarantee you, has at least gained me 15 to 20 life throughout a game. It stopped them from beating me down or putting me in pressure. Tell you the truth, I actually caught the card that I've copied the most with Metamorph in the 4 rounds I played, Pristine Talisman. And then I'd animate it and then beat them down with it. So, I mean, you tap it, you put 1 mana in your mana pool, you gain 1 life. All around, for a common, this technically should be uncommon in my opinion. Very good card. If you're running a control deck, I recommend you run at least 2 or 3. They do get you the mana you need when you need it. And in this deck, I don't worry about colored mana because most of everything costs are, you know, colorless. So very, very good card. Got me there a lot of times. This is the fun card. These next two cards are very fun. You got Mimic Vat. Now, Mimic Vat costs 3 colorless. It has imprint. Whenever a non-token creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may exile that card. If you do, retain each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard. Now, with that ability alone, you can stop Undying, because once you copy it, once it's graveyard, you put it under Mimic Vat, and then if another creature dies, you just drop off the creature you copied with Mimic Vat, and it doesn't come back because it's not in the battlefield when it goes in the graveyard. So with that being said, let's move on to the other part of it. 3 colors, tap, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of exiled card. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the end step. My favorite thing, there's 2 favorite things I like to do with it. One I'll go over right now. The other one I will go over once I show you the next card. One of which is copying Wormcoil Engine, putting it on Mimic Vat, playing it out of Mimic Vat, sacking or attacking, doing the 6, and then paying 1 and sacking it to the Phyrexia's Court and getting the 2 tokens. The creature dies, the 2 tokens do not. So it doesn't get exiled at the end of the step. Or was it the next end step? It doesn't get exiled at the end of the next end step. The tokens are there, the creature card's dead, it's still under the Mimic Vat. So you get 2 creatures, you gain 7 life, 6 from the creature, 1 from the core, and it's just awesome. Sorry about that, guys. Next card, Spine of Ishsop. Now, the mana cost is a little heavy. It costs 7. But with this deck, believe it or not, with 23 lands, you end up actually having about 13 mana sources towards mid-game. From the Pristine Talismans, from drawing them with Ichors or Microsynth Wellsprings, things like that. And you end up actually winging through your deck pretty quick. Spine of Ishsop, whenever it enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. When Spine of Ishsop is put into a graveyard, from the battlefield, return Spine of Ishsop to owner's hand. Now, what I'm going to say with this is, why I brought Mimic Vat up is, you can, let's say for example, you play Spine of Ishsop, you copy it with a Metamorph. You animate Metamorph with Tezzeret, you attack with the Metamorph Spine of Ishsop, and then you sacrifice it. You would put it, because it's a 5/5 artifact creature at the time you sacked it, you can actually put it in under Mimic Vat and then just keep generating tokens. Or you don't even need to do that. You can actually sacrifice it and it just come back to your hand as Metamorph, and then you just play it and copy Spine of Ishsop again. Another little trick that I'm going to go ahead and put this away since we're done with the artifacts for now. Another little trick that you can actually do with Phyrexia's Core is, say they play Oblivion Ring on one of your artifacts. Sacrifice it, gain the life, and get it back with Buried Ruin. Awesome synergy through this deck. It was extremely fun to play. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and in the main deck with the kill spells. So we have 3 Black Sun Zenith. This card actually came in handy a lot during the game. In fact, I've played it when I couldn't even kill everything on their board, just to copy another one of their creatures without the minus counters and just wipe their board with the other stuff. So Black Sun Zenith, if you don't know what it does, it costs 2 black and X, put X 1/1 counters on each creature, shuffle Black Sun Zenith into owner's library. This doesn't really hurt us at all, basically due to the fact that there's only 5 creatures in the deck, 2 of which copy things, and most of the time it's copying basic artifacts, and the other time, Wormcoil Engine, you just get back with Buried Ruin, and then you have your tokens after the Black Suns hits, and most of their stuff's dead. And like I said, you actually generate a lot of mana in this deck. There's not one time I was ever just not having the mana I needed, ever, in this deck. It's just insane. So we got 3 Black Sun Zenith, very good card. We have 2 Go for the Throat, 1 Doomblade, 1 Sever the Bloodline, 1 Tragic Slip, and 1 Curse of Death's Hold. I was expecting to play more against weenie type decks or token decks, but I guess with Avacyn Restore coming out, a lot of decks actually went the Venser Bounce Lock, I don't know, the Blink Lock deck type. So this card actually only came in handy against Haunted Humans. Once I put it down, he actually had to Celestial Purge it in order to continue trying to do anything against me. It actually stalled him for 4 turns while I built up an army of artifacts. So with that being said, very good card to have. If tokens fades out, maybe not so much. Against humans, it still does a lot of work. Against Lingering Souls, it still does a lot of work. It's just all around good card. I think it's very underestimated what it can do. 2 black, 3 colorless. Not that hard to get there in this deck. Maybe maximum turn 4, but you'll never be hard up for mana on this deck. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the sideboard. And like I said, this deck is actually off of an MTGO tag called Mesmerize. The entire body, all the lands, it's all him. The sideboard, a little bit him. A lot of it me, just based upon the fact that, like I said, my meta is a little bit different. So, that being said, I'll drop one of the cards here. So, with that being said, here is the sideboard. Now we have 3 negate. The reason this card is in here is Planeswalkers and Swords kill this deck. That's the only thing that kills this deck. And I'll say Planeswalkers mainly for Gideon and Karn. All the other Planeswalkers I really don't care about, but it's those 2 and Swords that kill this deck. Just because you can't get rid of them any other way except for Spine of Issa. And usually when Gideon comes down, it's way too early for Spine to even hit. So with that being said, the negates is where it comes in. This actually came in really handy against that Haunted Humans deck, because I got rid of their Celestial Purges and their Oblivion Rings. So, with that being said, great card to have. A lot of people don't expect in this deck, and with only about, 9 blue sources of mana, people don't expect you to be running counter at that. So, this next card is actually pretty funny, because no one expects you to ever play this card. And the reason why is because a lot of people don't see it as constructed playable, but it does a lot of work against token decks and Delver. This next card is One-Eyed Scarecrow. If you don't know what it does, don't feel bad. I had to reread it as well when I saw it. But for 3 colorless, it has Defender. It's a 2/3. Creatures with flying your opponent's control get -1/-0. Now the reason this is in here over another Curse of Death's Hold is because it's quicker to get out, it's colorless, it's an artifact that you can make a 5/5 defender, but regardless, it's an artifact. So, I mean, if they flip their Delver, instead of taking 3 every turn, you're taking 2. If they play Lingering Souls, if they play, Midnight Haunting, anything like that, you're looking at 0/1s. They have to play another pump spell just to get around the fact that you played this card. And the fact that it's a One-Eyed Scarecrow. How cool is that? I love the art on that. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. Very, very cool card to have. Very techy. I'm sure there's other cards in here that would be better suited, but this card is actually pretty cool. Now, we have, for our control matchups, which I never actually had to sideboard in. There wasn't any control matchups that I actually wanted to play this in. The only other control matchup I had was Solar Flare, and he was running like Terminus and things like that. So I wasn't really big on playing Azure Mage, but she's really good against blue-black control because you can outrace their card advantage if you get to play her. And no one really wants to waste a Tragic Slip or go for a third or anything like that on a 2/1 Azure Mage. But all around, great card to have. Against aggro matchups and blue-black control, surprisingly enough, we have Elixir of Immortality. Now, there's only one time where this deck actually almost decked out, and that was against Haunted Humans, believe it or not. And all my kill spells or all my win conditions were at the bottom of the deck, and anything he played, I would just kill because I kept drawing Black Sun Zenith. I had about 15 mana sources on board. There was really no way for him to win, but he wanted to see if there was a way I could win. And that was the only time I ever came close to decking. The other times, it was just, you know, again, draw, go, play, kill. So this is really good against red-green aggro, which is a problem this deck sees. And the only reason this deck sees a problem with red-green aggro is because of the swords. Swords, again, I repeat, swords, again, must not hit board. If they do, you have to kill the creature as quickly as possible, unless you have a spine in your hand. Again, that's why the negates are in the sideboard. But Elixir of Immortality, good against red deck wins. Any aggro deck, really. Good against blue-black because you get to shuffle your graveyard back in your library, and all that work that they did to get you to draw all those cards, or mill all those cards, is now null and void. So, we're moving on here. I have one Steel Hellkite. I've only had to board this guy in once, and I never had to play him. If you don't know what he does, he costs 6 colorless. He's a 5/5 flyer. If you pay 2 into him, Steel Hellkite gets +1/+0 until end of turn. If you pay X into him, destroy each non-land permanent with converting mana cost X whose controller was dealt damage, but Steel Hellkite this turn. Activate this ability once each turn. This is actually in here for Haunted Humans, and not necessarily Haunted Humans, but any Humans deck, anything that's running Oblivion Ring that doesn't have a lot of air support. Even if you like nuked it, you went Black Sun Zenith for 4. He's a 1/1. He gets rid of all the Oblivion Rings, all the swords. I never really had to play him. Never really felt the need, never felt threatened to play him. So he was in there just for filler, I guess. We got the one Ratchet Bomb, again, to sack it, kill artifacts. Let's face it, that's what you're going to do with it. Or in this case, you animate it and do whatever. But now, we have 3 Ghost Quarter here. Now, again, like I said, the original Ghost Quarter's in here because of obvious reasons. Nephalia Drowned Yard, RGB Wolfrun, Inkmoth Nexus, you name it, that's why it's in there. I mean, that's just basically all it is. I actually used one to trick my opponent into searching for a non-blue source when I was afraid he had to dissipate in his hand, and I ran a Worm Coil out. Funny part about that, he let me resolve a Worm Coil. He copied it with a Phantasmal Image. I then, in turn, or not Phantasmal Image, Phyrexian Metamorph. I, in turn, sacked my Phyrexian, or my Worm Coil engine, and then severed Bloodline his. So that was a pretty cool move. That was against Solar Flare, so really good card to use against utility lands right there. We have a Sever the Bloodline. Again, used to get rid of Worm Coils without breaking them, and anything really. Blightsteel Colossus makes his head around every now and then. It's really cool to metamorph for Frost Titan against Heartless Summoning, and then Sever the Bloodline your own Frost Titan just to get rid of their board. So, very cool card. I really, really had high expectations for this one. It was printed. A lot of people didn't think it'd get there, and now look at it. We have one more Phyrexian Metamorph, hexproof creatures, legendary creatures, you name it, it's in there. If they got something big, I want to steal it, I want to take it. The only deck I actually ever put this in against was probably Solar Flare and Wolfrun. So, cool card. And for our final card, Tragic Slip. Let's face it, target creature gets -13, -13. That's just what it is. And believe it or not, in this deck, even though there's not that many creatures, there's enough ways to get rid of creatures where this actually becomes a possibility every time. So with that being said, let me talk about my matches real quick. So I played against, first round I played against an Angel Brew. Wasn't very that intimidating at all. mid-range deck, used new cards. I don't know what synergy they were trying to go with it, but they couldn't get enough creatures out quick enough for me not to just deal with them or copy them. Second round, I played it against Haunted Humans, which was my longest game, and first game I won pretty quickly. It was actually, I mean, you just get Tezzeret out, you ramp them up, and then you nuke them. That's basically how I won. You know, I played Wormcoil Engine. He Fiend Huntered it the next turn, his next turn. Then at the end of his turn, I go for the Throated, and then I had the 2 Wormcoil Engine tokens, and then I pumped up Tezzeret with the Throne of Geth. He was up to 4. I had enough damage on board just to kill him next turn after Tezzeret. Second game, not so lucky. Got a couple Thalia. A Thalia on the board, a Geist of Saint Traft, and a Silverblade Paladin on the Geist, which proved to be actually pretty brutal. It took him only 2 turns to take me down. Because of Thalia, I didn't have a chance to get the 1 extra mana I needed to wipe the board to stay alive. It just happened that quick. Third game lasted about, it would have been to time, mainly because, like I said, he got an early start, took me down about 14, 13 around there. I wiped his board. I just kept wiping his board the whole game, gaining life the whole time. All my threats were at the bottom of the deck. So he had no real way of killing me, and I had no real way of killing him. So he just wanted to see if I would deck myself. And then he realized that I could just keep playing Black Sun Zenith, shuffling in my library, and just keep drawing it. And never deck out, and he would deck out before I would. But it turns out I finally got a Wormcoil on board as well as a Tezzeret, and that was all she wrote on there. Then the third game, Solar Flare. First game, I just aggressively, because I knew I was playing against a Nesper colored deck, threw down Tezzeret, animated a Grafdigger's Cage, and a Nile Spellbomb, and just beat him down with it. Second game, pretty much the same thing happened. It was a little bit slower. Just due to the fact that I didn't have the Tezzeret in my hand from the get-go. Had to draw into it, but you know, you throw down a couple Pristine Talisman. I ended up being up at like 57 life, and he just couldn't deal with it. So, and then the final round, again, blue, black, green Wolfrun was running. Wasn't really, I mean, he had the Kessigs, he had the Nexus, but it looked like he was focusing more on Titans because he had Grave Titans, Inferno Titans, and Primeval Titans. Didn't have really any mid-range ramp, Metamorphs, anything like that. Was running Hunt Masters, never saw Thrawn. But, and regardless, I just ended up copying his stuff, killing it, attacking, and that's pretty much all she wrote. So, if you guys actually look into building a good deck, this is definitely a deck you want to build. It's very, very cheap, I think, right now. It only costs about, if you have no cards, it costs about $288 to build. If you have most of the cards, like the Wormcoils, the Dark Slick Shores, the Tezzerets, the Liliana, if you have any of those cards, this deck will cost you like maybe $20 to build. Very, very cheap deck. Very fun. Very... If you're not into thinking a lot or doing a lot, like planning stuff out, it's not for you. But if you are into doing that kind of stuff, look into building this deck. Again, I'm going to be putting down in the description the link to Wasted Meter, where you can see some of the commentaries I did last week. I'll put in there the link to the Frank Lapore article on the deck, which he'll have a link to the Mesmerize. So I'll just do that so you guys can click on that, see what he did. His sideboard is a little bit different. Instead of negates, he's running distresses, but it filled the same role. So essentially, you know, you go there, you can look around, but really check out Wasted Meter, check out Frank Lapore's thing on brainburst.com, and look forward to a mono black control deck that I'm going to attempt to run again. It's going to be a little bit different than it used to be. And I focused it more on what mono black control used to be back in the days of Odyssey block. Some of you might not even played that far back. But Anyways, if you guys got anything for me, leave any comments, anything down below. Like, rate, subscribe. Go over to Wasted Meter, like, rate, subscribe. I'm actually going to try to get in the process of finishing up some designs for their t-shirts and their playmats and things like that. So I might have a link for you guys later on where you can go and actually buy some of the merchandise that I've designed graphically. But for now, this is Sharp Corners for Kids, and thanks for watching, guys. Bye.